ongoing clampdown media and the incessant persecution and attacks on journalists. So my name is Blessing Gorejena. I'm the Executive Director of the Zimbabwe Human Rights NGO Forum. And with me here is Dewa Mavinga, who is the Senior Researcher Rights Watch, focusing on Southern Africa, and Mr. Ernest Mudzengi, who is the Executive Director of the media. So we'll start with Mr. Dewa Mavinga, who will read out the press statement that we have issued out as the three organizations, and thereafter, Mudzengi will then give us an overview of the issues that are affecting media freedoms of expression, and the work of journalists in Zimbabwe. So I will hand over to you, Dewa, to read out the press statement for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Blessing. So as Human Rights Watch, Zimbabwe Human Rights NGO Forum, and the Media Center Zimbabwe, we are calling on Zimbabwe, the authorities, to end the clampdown on the media. We have seen that there have been arrests that show the need to police abuse of journalists. Zimbabwe authorities should immediately end the crackdown on the media, create an independent body to impartially investigate police abuses against journalists. On November 2, the police in Harare arrested and detained American journalist Martha O'Donovan on charges of abuse of social media for allegedly insulting President Mugabe on Twitter and for using social media to overthrow the government. The arrest appears to be linked to the mandate media under the newly established Ministry of Cybersecurity, Threat Detection and Mitigation. Zimbabwe granted O'Donovan bail on November 9, following an application filed by the Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights. The charges against Martha O'Donovan appear to be baseless and arbitrary action to control social media. Is the Zimbabwe government's latest expansion of its dangerous campaign against media freedom in the country. During 2016, police throughout Zimbabwe beat up and arbitrarily detained 23 journalists. They were all released without charge. There have been no investigations of the arrests in these cases, infringe on the rights of to be free from mistreatment and arbitrary arrest, but also undermine media freedom in the country. The head of the police, Chiuri, has failed to publicly condemn this misconduct by the police. Police harassment and mistreatment of journalists has been rising since 2016. Organizations call on the police. There is accountability for this mistreatment. On September 29, for example, beat up and injured Mugweta Frenyika and Brighton Goko, journalists for the privately owned newspaper, The Daily News, as they covered protests in Harare's central business district. The police neither investigated the journalists' complaints nor arrested anyone. 7, a police team from arrested 3 journalists from the privately owned Newsday for allegedly filming and taking photos as the police harassed people in Harare. Obey Manayati, Shepard Tozureva, and Abigo Matsikidze were beaten along with their driver, Rafael Piri. The complaint that identified the police officers involved, but the police did not investigate. Police arrested Newsday editor Wisdom Zunga, Richard Chidza, and charged them with insulting or undermining the president following a publication story on Mugabe's health. Zimbabwe should immediately halt police harassment of journalists and uphold media freedoms that are guaranteed in the Constitution. The government should urgently establish an independent mechanism to investigate and remedy abuses by the police. Party to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, both which guarantee the right to freedom of expression. The Rights Committee, which monitors state compliance, stated that the mere fact that forms of expression are considered to be insulting to a public figure is not sufficient position of penalties. The right to free expression encompassing freedom of speech and the press is protected in Zimbabwe. But Zimbabwe has several laws in place that limit Zimbabweans' right to freedom of expression. It should amend or repeal as appropriate laws that infringe on the right to freedom of expression and media freedom, including the Protection of Privacy Act, IPA, used to license and regulate the media, the Criminal Law Codification and Reform Act, used to criminalize media work and citizens' right to free expression, including the president, and the Broadcasting Services Act, which hinders free establishment of broadcasting services. Under international law, restrictions on freedom of expression for national security or public order are only permissible if strictly construed and necessary and proportionate to address a legitimate threat of media repression and muzzling cyberspace. The Security Ministry should facilitate expression, right to access to information, and other media freedoms. That independent reporting or dare to express critical views punished for performing this sacred public duty.
Thank you, Dewa. I think before I entertain questions, I will ask Ernest to give us an overview of the situation relating to freedom of expression in Zimbabwe, and also some of the challenges that journalists have been facing in Zimbabwe. Over to you, Ernest.
Thank you. I think our statement almost sums it all. What I must emphasize is that media freedom and the freedom of expression in general is the lifeblood of any democratic society. So the muzzling of press freedom, the muzzling of media freedoms, the harassment of journalists, we are seeing institute a case in which there are some vested interests to stop the development of democracy in our society. So we have people who are against democracy engaging in clamping down on journalists and so on and so forth. The Constitution of Zimbabwe guarantees freedom of expression. It also guarantees of the right of access to information, and it also guarantees the freedom of the media. It is actually a reversal of the gains that we had through the enactment of the current Zimbabwean Constitution in 2018. In a realignment of laws to ensure that the rights, the communicative rights guaranteed in the Constitution are actually enjoyed by journalists and other citizens. That is actually a problem. So we are in a situation in which there are to reverse, to turn the clock backwards and ensure that we continue to live in the medieval era in terms of communicative rights. Then when you look at it, in what they call the super information highway, the internet is a super information highway according to the former American president. But what we are seeing is a situation in which some people are trying to take in the 40s models of vehicles onto that highway. They are now trying to take the same laws that were used in the medieval era to guide the media in the modern era. So we see the creation of the new ministry, cyber threat, and what. We are not saying that there are some cyber crimes that are performed. We are not saying that there are threats to democrats online. That regulation should be reasonably democratic. Regulation should not mean that we go back to the era where freedom is anathema to society, to be done in a way that guarantees the media is there to check on the other arms of government, be it the judiciary, be it the executive. But when we then have the laws, the media from doing that, then the media is being denied its role in society, and that is counter-democratic, and that is counter-progressive. We have developments that are technological, and the Zimbabweans should be allowed to make use of them. Be made afraid to utilize our phones. We should not be made afraid to be on the internet, as it were. But we should actually be gaining from that. The media industry, if you go to other countries, is actually one of the chief employers in terms of job creation and so on and so forth. But in our country, it's very difficult. If you look at our laws, they make it very difficult. Apart from making it difficult for the journalists who are already working to do their work, policy environment makes it difficult for the media to thrive as an industry, which is why journalists out of work, we now have, those are the problems. And to make matters worse, those who try freedoms within the very limited space we already have are being subjected to harassment, insults, and so on and so forth. If we were to go to America, our system there, I think we would be having so many arrested communities. Because you look at how Trump is described in the media, you look at how the government officials are criticized heavily in the media. Until arrest maybe every other minute if our system here is to be taken to other countries. So calling for through this statement is that journalists should simply be allowed to do their job. Journalists should not be harassed. Journalists should be allowed to enjoy their constitutionally guaranteed freedom. Not only journalists, but citizens at large. Because citizens in the new era have also become citizen journalists, and they are under threat from laws that are coming and so on and so on the different stakeholders to help us as journalists, to help us as citizens to enjoy our constitutionally and institutionally freedom.
Thank you, Ernest. I will invite questions now. I'll take the first round and let our panelists respond. And then if time permits, I'll move on to the second round. So if I can have the first round of 4 questions. If there are any. I recognize the gentleman over there.
Thank you. Mine is related to the issue of the proposal that a body must be set up to investigate complaints. I understand that Section 210 of the Constitution already provides an act of Parliament must be elected, setting up such a body to investigate complaints of the entire security services and in relation to that may come from the public. What is your view in respect that such an act has not been put in place, and there's actually a reserved judgment was reserved in the court for that issue? How do you these complaints happen?
Thank you. Richard?
Just wanted to know from your views regarding police have opened, like you indicated in the cases that you have highlighted, in which journalists have been arrested. In some cases, police have opened dockets, but never gone ahead and prosecuted. But these dockets remain open. What is your view regarding that? And the other issue would be, besides the issuing of statements, what would media practitioners and organizations like yourselves do in order to make sure whatever we demand as citizens or as journalists, that government allows citizens and journalists alike to enjoy their freedoms enshrined in the Constitution.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Do we have any more questions? Okay. Oh, okay.
Okay. We have had the local journalists that have been previously abused. Why is it that you are reacting now that this is last place? Are you speaking now?
So if there are no other questions, I will let my panelists respond to some of the questions that have been raised, and then we'll move on to the next round. So I'll start with you.
Thank you so much. The first question on the constitutional body, section 210 of the Constitution, that is precisely what we are calling for when we refer to an independent body that should be set up to impartially investigate police abuses against journalists or abuses by the security forces. So this body is envisaged in Zimbabwe, but it has not been set up, and we are calling for the urgent establishment of such a body. And that also speaks to the second question about willing to investigate or to prosecute or to take matters forward, because precisely because there is not that kind of constitutional that is independent of the police, but that is set up to investigate police abuses against members of the public, especially journalists. So if we have that kind of body, then those who are harassed or aggrieved or other citizens would go to that body to make reports. South Africa has got what is called the Independent Police Investigations Directorate. Zimbabwe does not have, but the Constitution says it should be there. So we are calling for it to be established. Besides statements, what can be done? We're saying that people should speak out when there are abuses. Journalists who are harassed, who are beaten up, should file complaints, and we should continue to push for the establishment of the necessary institutions that can protect these constitutionally guaranteed rights, which Zimbabwe also has to respect in terms of international law. On the final point, local journalists have been abused, yes, and this is why we are speaking out. A number of journalists who are in this press conference, we have spoken to them, we have documented their cases way before the American journalist was abused. But what we're saying is that it's not about nationality, but it's about constitutional respect of fundamental rights. It's about Zimbabwe's obligations that need to be protected. So we are saying we are calling for freedom for all citizens and for all journalists, local, international, or otherwise, because Zimbabwe has got those commitments in terms of its constitution and in terms of international treaties that it has signed up to, including the African Charter on Human and People's Rights.
Yeah, thank you. I think on the issue of complaints, I think you have already cited the issue of the constitutional provisions. We are equally worried that the constitution is not being implemented to the fullest. So a civil society is called for realignment of laws in the constitution, and we continue to do so. So it's a case of lack of political will, which we have always complained against, and we will continue to complain against. Then the issue of the dockets, it actually points to harassment. Always have an albatross hanging on your neck, so that next time you will not report, thinking that there is another case, they may end up piling up. So it's an act of harassment. It's a well-calculated strategy to make sure that the journalists are get. It's a way of getting measured. They say, no, we are going to proceed by way of someone's time to make sure that you are constantly afraid. At home, before you write another story, we'll ask you, but you still have it. You know, we see we have children here. When you think that they are going to suffer, you know, then the way forward. Statements themselves are necessary. But as you know, there's not even an army civil society, as you know, does not have the police. Through statements, solidarity, they can only do marches, peaceful means of protest. That's what civil society does. So apart from statements, we have also had marches. I think you remember we had marches, we had the solidarity messages, and we have also petitioned government as civil society collectively. Statements legitimate, but they are not the only vehicle that we have used. We are actually expressing our concern, and this is what we are doing. Then why now? It's unfortunate that it's only matter out by my comrade here. But we have also mentioned other journalists there. We have Chiza, we have mentioned we have and others in the statement that we are going to see. So it's not only about money. It's only coincidental that she's also among those who have been harassed against the American citizen. But our concern is about the freedom, it's about the freedom of expression, it's about the right of access to information. Then previously, this is not the only time that we have spoken out as civil society. We have spoken against the harassment and subsequent disappearance of Eliza Mara, against the harassment of members of the Zimbabwe Union of Journalists, harassment of the Zimbabwe Independent and the other media houses. Not only speaking out, civil society is also active. I think you will remember recently that myself, Marvin Mukuru, and Makokova, the state attempted to infringe on our freedoms by making us state witnesses. A trial of a person we don't even know, a person we have only read about in the media. And NISA, human rights, were on our side. They provided a lawyer who made sure that we didn't testify. Up to this day, we haven't testified. So those are some of the civil society continues to undertake to make sure that these freedoms that are constitutionally enshrined and guaranteed.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think in addition to what colleagues have just said in terms of some of the mechanisms that we consistently utilize as civil society, in addition to the issuance of press conference, is also the concept of litigation. I think engagement with lawyers is critical because you have your rights granted in the Constitution, but you also need to enforce them in the event that they are being undermined or they are being taken away from us. And also in addition to that, I think we're also calling upon institutions such as the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission to also be seized of this issue, because harassment of journalists and clampdown on the media, it's a human rights violation. And as an institution that is mandated to investigate complaints and also ensure that there is greater protection of human rights, it should also take note of those issues. So we are also calling on them, in addition to our request for the speedy establishment of the complaints mechanism under Section 210 of the Constitution, to also investigate some of them, also approach them as individual civil society organizations, and I'm hoping that it's something that they are also taking note of seriously. So I will invite the second round of questions or points of clarity. See none. Okay. So I will ask our panelists to just give us perhaps a 1-minute rundown of their remarks.
Thank you so much, Blessing. I think for us, the fight for media freedoms is fundamental. It is key to the work that we do as Human Rights Watch, which is to defend human rights worldwide. We work in 90 countries, and Zimbabwe is one of those countries where we are saying, together with our local partners, we need to do more. And we are also talking to the authorities Blessing has mentioned the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, but also our message is also going to the Police Commissioner General, who is responsible for media freedoms, including security. So directly to the authorities to take action. It's not just a question of saying what we believe should be done, but we are putting pressure, and we are also beyond Zimbabwe, talking to the authorities in the Southern African Development Community, SADC, and the African Union to look at what our leaders refer to as African solutions to African problems, to say that this is not just about national covenants or treaties on human rights. The African Charter on Human and People's Rights is central, and Zimbabwe has a homegrown 2013 constitution, which is very clear in terms of fundamental freedoms. But what we do not have is the implementation, so the practice. So there is a huge gap. The Zimbabwean constitution is progressing, but citizens are not enjoying those rights. And we are here to say that we stand together in demanding and calling for media freedoms, for the full respect of human rights in the country, as well as respect for the rule of law.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Maybe let me just thank colleagues from for coming and state that we are going to continue advocating for freedoms and liberties pertaining to communication, the media, and even at individual level. And then we are also pursuing more particular issues pertaining to internet freedom. And we are actually going to the people with road shows in conjunction, I think, with the Zimbabwe Democracy Institute, about freedom online. Then we are going to interface again, journalists and other stakeholders with policymakers on those matters. And we encourage colleagues here present to be part of those debates so that we can have a collective effort in pushing for these freedoms. Colleagues, and let's continue to push for these freedoms.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time.